Welcome, everybody. I am so happy that you are here. And if you are here, I'd like to hear or actually see in the chat where you are at this moment. Even if you are watching this, that you're watching the replay and you're not watching live, I would love to hear where you are in this moment. What state, what country, what hemisphere you are in. If you are in the northern hemisphere, well, happy spring. And if you are in the southern hemisphere, happy fall. Those two seasons are my favorite, and I hope that wherever you are enjoying this. More than anything, I'm so glad you made it here with me. Being here with me and watching this live today is important. You know why? Because it already means that you respect women. Oh, you are in Great Barrington, Thais. Yes. Hello, Massachusetts. A place I have in my heart. And Samantha, you are in Atlanta, Georgia, a place that I hope to visit sometime, hopefully in the next year. So if you are someone who respects women and wants to make sure that your communication with women is in alignment with your value of respect, then this live is going to be very useful for you because I am going to teach you how to talk your respect walk. So I'm already assuming that you respect all the women in your life. Is that a yes? Can I get a yes somewhere in the chat? Do you respect all the women in your life? Then I want to teach you how to communicate that value on respect every time you interact with with a woman or with women. I'm going to teach you how to talk your respect walk, and especially I'm going to teach you 4 things that need to be present in your communication as you are talking to women, talking about women, and even thinking about women. So talking in your internal dialogue about women. And thank you, Samantha, for that. Yes, that you do respect women. Now, this is important because sometimes, even though we say we respect women, when we are communicating, we are not showing that. Our communication is not in alignment with that value of respect. Just because we say we respect women doesn't mean that we are expressing that in our interactions with women. And I'm telling you this because I see it every day in my communication coaching practice with couples, with men, and also with women. So I want to give you these 4 elements that I teach everybody who comes to work with me who says they want to relate to women in an authentic and respectful way. And by the way, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alejandra Siroca from Language Alchemy. I'm a transformative teacher and communication coach, and I help people have more peace and more harmony and equality in their lives with their communication through transformative communication. So let's dive in because this live is not just directed to men, it's also directed to women and anybody who, if you're gender fluid or transgender, anybody who respects women is going to benefit from these 4 elements that I want to teach you so that you can talk your respect walk when you are communicating with women. Now, before I share these 4 elements, I want to say that sometimes when we don't know these elements, that when we are not communicating with women in this way, then hello, I love that you wrote a heart there. I'm not sure who you are, but Tangamani, thank you for being here. So I want to share with you that when I have taught these 4 elements to men, it is the women in their lives who have given me great feedback about these men's communication after doing the work. So the 4 things I'm going to share with you may seem a little simple. They aren't. They take work and they take time, so be patient. Let's go to number 1. Let's jump in. So number 1 is to know your relational values, the relational values that you have when you want to communicate with women. So what are some relational values? Let me give you some You're welcome, Tangamani. Let me give you some examples of some relational values. You may have a relational value of respect, of authenticity, consideration, empathy, compassion, shared power, equality, partnership, acceptance, generosity. So think for a moment, think about two or three relational values that you have when you are interacting, when you're thinking about women. Think about two or three relational values that you would like to communicate and write them in the chat. So some of these values that I mentioned: authenticity, respect, compassion, empathy, generosity, equality, consideration, trust, safety, emotional safety, all these are relational values. So as you have them, write in the chat two or three relational values that you have when you are communicating with women, because the rest is going to make sense. My suggestion is that when you are communicating with women, that first of all, you have that intention every time you have an interaction with a woman. If you know your two or three core relational values, then you can say those to yourself. And Thais, you said trust and safety. Thank you. And one of you said all of them. I love them. I love that. So when you have these relational values in mind and you're communicating with a woman, your language is going to shift and it's going to be more in alignment with with those values, those core relational values. But another thing that you can do is that if you're not sure if you're communicating in alignment with your relational values, you can think about two conversations that you've had, two interactions you've had with women. And when you think about them, notice how you were able to express those core relational values that are important for you, or whether there was conflict or misunderstanding because your communication didn't reflect those core relational values. So, for example, as Thais here mentioned, trust and safety, if you had an interaction with a woman where there was misunderstanding, there was conflict, there was disagreement, there was discomfort, you may go back and look at how you communicated that didn't convey that sense of trust or that sense of safety. So that's something that you can do. So that's the first element. Make sure you know your core relational values with women and make sure your communication is reflecting those core relational values. Now let's go to number two. The second element that's important when you want to talk your respect when you want to talk your respect walk with women is to become aware of the labels that you are having when you are relating with women. And thank you, Claudia, for saying that for you, it's emotional safety, empathy, compassion, respect, and trust. I love having those values when you're communicating with women. So number two, what are the labels that you are using with women that you are not using with men, or how different are those labels? So, for example, if when you're talking about women, you're referring to them, and I'm talking about women, so adult human beings, and you're referring to adult women as girls or chicks, then I surely hope that when you are talking about adult men, you are referring to them as boys or ducklings or puppies or something that reflects a being that's not mature. Because the way we tend to label women, the words that we tend to use to refer to women are terms that reflect someone who is not an adult. Even as we use a term like chick. So it's not even an adult animal of that species, which would be a hen, I guess. So, or for example, when you talk to a group of women, do you use the word and the term ladies, or do you use the term guys? Because if you're using the term guys when you're talking to women, then you might be referring to a group of men and not a group of women. So notice, what are the labels that you're giving. Same thing if you are thinking about an interaction that you've had with a man, and that man came and from your perspective, you think that that man was assertive and confident. How do you talk about that behavior when that behavior was shown by a man? Versus how do you talk about that same behavior when it was a woman who exuded or showed that behavior with you? So think about that. I had a client who was making deals, and he was traveling around the world as part of his role in a company, and he was making deals with different CEOs. And in our coaching communication sessions, when he would make a deal or even have an interview with a male CEO, he would say, "Oh, I have a big day today because I'm going to talk to the big kahuna. I'm going to talk to the big guy. I'm going to talk to the big guns." And when he would have the same interaction, so he was making deals, he was selling some services that were very, very expensive, and he needed to talk to the CEO of that company, and the person was female. Then he would say, "Well, I'll have to talk to the princess." Again, saying a label, using a word that doesn't reflect the same power that a male counterpart would have. Or sometimes he would say, "I'll probably have to deal with an icy queen." So even though he was using the word queen, which refers to an adult person in charge, then he would use the word icy to just show the discomfort. However, this is how subtle language is. Whenever I talked to him about respect for women, he would say, "I respect women because I love my mother, I love my sister, and I love my wife." So here is when language, when we is showing us that actually we're not really talking our respect walk if we are using these terms. So number 3, I want to encourage you to look at the double standards, biases, and assumptions you have about women versus men. And some of these assumptions that you are having about women were inherited from previous generations, or they are more in alignment with a younger version of you, an immature version of you, an underdeveloped version of you, or a version that is actually objectifying women, not treating women in the same way that you are treating men of the same role, the same age, the same capacity, the same socioeconomic status, the same race, the same religion, etc. Let me give you an example, because this is so subtle that I have to check my own assumptions, and I have to make sure what language I'm using when I'm talking about women, or the assumptions and biases that I have. My husband and I, last year, we bought a Roomba, which is a robo vacuum cleaner. And when we took it out of the box, I said, "We're going to give it a name." And guess who gave it a female name? It was me. I said, "We're going to name it Elsie." And then we both had this moment where we looked at each other and we said, "Why a female name?" And I realized, wow, because I had been taught my whole life that the domestic work was done by a woman. And so we talked about it. We had like half-hour conversation with my husband about the roles and the ideas that we had inherited from our previous generations. And we ended up changing the name. So our Roomba is called Philip. This is so subtle. So I want to encourage you to pay attention to that. And then number 4 is that when you are talking to a woman, I want to encourage you to ask open-ended questions rather than interrupting and giving advice. This is the number 1 complaint I get from women, whether it is that I'm working with women who are in a relationship or not in a relationship, or who are in a leadership position, and they say that when, especially men, but also women, are talking to them versus a male counterpart, that the male counterparts receives the open-ended questions, but they receive advice. and they are interrupted and receive advice. And we did a whole thing on interruptions in our previous live, so you can go and watch that from last week. So when you are giving women the opportunity to talk and you ask open-ended questions, if there's anything that needs figuring out, if there's anything that needs fixing, the woman is going to be able to say that. And if the woman needs advice, she will be able to ask you for advice. If that is what's needed, just wait, be patient. That's going to come. Most of the time, many people, and many of these people are females, they need to talk things out and hear their own voice so that they can connect to their own capacity and have suggestions or solve an issue if there is an issue to begin with. So to recap, the 4 elements that need to be present in your communication so that you can talk your respect walk are to know what your core relational values are and make sure you're communicating in alignment with those core relational values. Number 2, to know the labels that you're using and being aware of what labels you're using with men or women. Number 3, the assumptions, biases that you're having and whether they match you or a previous generation or an idea of the world that's obsolete and not useful. And number 4, stop interrupting and ask open-ended questions instead, and stop giving unsolicited advice. I hope this was useful. When you try these things, let me know how it goes. Next week, I am going to talk about how to talk to children, how to talk to girls specifically, and how to talk to boys about girls. Because as we are learning language, which is when we are children, all these ideas of biases and assumptions start to become solidified. It's so important to be able to talk to little girls with respect so that they can grow up being confident and confident women. So I hope you join me in the next live that I'm going to do on Friday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern time. And if you want a shorter version of this, join my mailing list. I'm going to send you a 3-minute video every week with some transformative communication tools you can put into practice in your daily life. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And thank you so much for respecting women. Bye.